Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 35 of Films and Fermentation. Episode 35 is actually season 2, episode 2. But for the sake of not confusing everybody, I'm going to continue to keep dialing the episode numbers up. Tonight, we are talking about the subject of books adapted to film, or as we like to say, the book was better. Mike is playing with his new soundboard in the background. On this episode, we will be discussing books that have been adapted to film, some good, some not so good, and some that are downright criminal. For the purposes of time and mental endurance, we are only talking about films adapted from novels. Movies adapted from graphic novels, comic books, and other source material are going to get their own show later on. We will only...
And James Bond.
And James Bond, yeah. Mike had a list of James Bond films, but I said, why don't we save that for a different episode, because there's a lot of them. We only briefly will probably discuss Harry Potter, since we did a whole Harry Potter episode not too long ago. So if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and check it out. It was a pretty good one. It was also one of our most listened to episodes so far. Now on with the show. Mike, what happened this day in film history?
This day in film history in 1963, From Russia with Love, second James Bond film based on the novel by Ian Fleming, starring Sean Connery and Daniela
Bianchi. Yeah.
Premieres in London.
You motherfucker. You still found a way to get James Bond in there, didn't you? Even I told you we were going to
Damn right. Hey, it's a book, movie. It works for the show.
I mean, most of them were books. Ian Fleming wrote a lot of the novels before. Like, the novels, I think, came out in the 50s. And then the first James Bond film was 1960, I want to say, which was Dr. No.
Yeah, but that wasn't the first book.
No, it wasn't the first book. The first book, I think, was Casino Royale.
Yeah, the Daniel Craig movie.
Yeah. Although there was a Casino Royale film made in, I think, the 70s with, who was the guy from the Pink Panther? Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers.
All right. And what happened? Oh, what's your fun drink fact?
My fun drink fact is people with blue eyes have a greater alcohol tolerance. I'm shit out of luck.
Yeah. Kev, you have blue eyes, right? Yeah, that explains it.
That works.
Greater, I don't know. I don't have blue eyes, and I have a lot of alcohol tolerance. I think most of it has to do with either being overweight
and practice,
or from practice, or from that time I got hammered at Chrissy's wedding and still don't remember 4.5 hours. I think that night made me immune to alcohol.
Yeah.
So I have some notes from the last show. I recently watched the M. Night Shyamalan movie Old.
Okay, how was it?
It wasn't one of his worsts, but it wasn't one of his best.
That's a ringing endorsement.
So I was thinking to the last episode was like the sequels that destroyed the franchise. Mm-hmm. Shyamalan doesn't have sequel. Well, he has sequels now, but like he kind of destroyed his own franchise, like his name. So he started with The Sixth Sense, which was a great film, followed it with Unbreakable, which was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That was followed by Signs, which was okay. That was followed by The Village, which is where it's starting to decline a little bit. And that was followed by Lady in the Water, which is
I would disagree with it. Started to decline with Signs.
Yeah, I mean, it had some good moments, but it also had a little bit of he got too much into his own gimmick with the twist endings, I think.
Yeah.
Then he had The Village and he had Lady in the Water, which was an absolute suckfest. I don't even know what he did after that. Like, there were a few films he did in between. It got to a point where you'd see
The Last Airbender.
Yeah, Last Airbender was oh my god, that was I heard it. I haven't seen it because I really don't know the animated it's based on, but it's I heard it was a travesty. And then it got to a point where you'd see his name pop up on the screen at the movies and people would laugh. And it'd be like an M. Night Shyamalan film. Because that was followed by The Happening. in which nothing happened. And then he had
then he did have a comeback with Split.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Really, yeah.
It was kind of like with the Rocky Balboa syndrome.
Yeah.
He had a little bit of a renaissance with Split, and then we find out that was a secret sequel to Unbreakable.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came out with Glass, which is supposed to end the trilogy, and I think it suffered from a low budget because it didn't satisfy me as far as concluding that overall arc. And then he came out with Old, which was kind of low key. Like it didn't really get a lot of like play, I think, because it kind of like just came and went. But I watched it the other day. It stars Rufus Sewell from Dark City, and a bunch of other like actors that like I've never seen before. I had a lot of unknowns in the film, except for the two kids in the movie that are brother and sister. One is the actor that starred in Hereditary, which is a horror film that came out a couple years ago, and the other, the sister, was played by the little girl from Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, okay.
And she's a really good actress, and she was probably the best part of the movie. It has a few twists in it, and the one twist isn't much of a spoiler because it kind of happens right away. You find out that the people that are trapped on this island where they're aging all have some sort of like physical ailment, and so the ailment increases as they get old. So like the one guy is losing his hearing, and it gets worse as he's getting older. Rufus Sewell's character has schizophrenia, and so the longer he gets on the island, the more the voices start telling him to do things. One person has brittle bone disease, so her bones start like calcifying while she's on this beach. So it's all like kind of crazy shit like that. So it had a cool premise, but I don't think it stuck the landing. The ending was kind of, and he has a problem with dialogue. His dialogue's not always that crisp. Some of it seems like very forced. And I got like internet bingo watching that film too. If you look for all like the M. Night Shyamalanisms, so you had a twist ending, multiple references to Philadelphia, uncomfortable close-ups on young girls in like scantily clad outfits.
Scene with the director as one of the cast.
He is one of the characters in the film, so he puts himself in it. Yeah. There were a lot of Shyamalanisms in it, and I was pretty sure I hit the bingo on it. Last episode, we were talking about the Batman series, the Tim Burton one, and we made mention of Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
Yes.
And I decided I had to rank my favorite Catwomen, just because. So I stuck only with live action actresses. I didn't do any of the cartoon series or anything like that. So I have as my least favorite Catwoman, Halle Berry.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of it has to do with how terrible that film is.
Yeah.
But it also really wasn't the real Catwoman anyway.
No.
Next one on my list is Lee Merriweather, who was Catwoman in the original Batman movie with Adam West.
Okay.
So there were three actresses who played Catwoman during the Adam West series. One was the movie version. And it was just simply because she came out of nowhere and just did the movie. It wasn't like,
Right.
Then I have Anne Hathaway, who, aside from looking pretty good in the leather outfit, I felt like didn't really have much purpose in that film. She's kind of there just to kind of push things along and get him in front of Bane and things like that.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm imagining the movie without her. It kind of works. I mean,
Yeah.
I think she did very good at being conniving and sneaky and everything else. But in terms of like her purpose in the movie, I'd agree.
Yeah. And then I have Ertha Kitt, who was the second of the Catwomen for the Adam West series. Although this is getting to like the point where like these are like the good actresses. So like I'm not dissing on Ertha Kitt. She was pretty good. But not as good as the original one, who's a little higher on the list. The third place on my list is Cameron Bicondova, who was the actress who played the young Selena Kyle in the Gotham series.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought she was really, really good. Then I have Julie Newmar, who was the original Catwoman on the Adam West series. And number one, mainly because of that outfit, Michelle Pfeiffer. Mainly because that movie came out in the 90s and I was still a teenager, and it was, part of my awakening.
I am looking forward to seeing Zoe.
Is it Zoe Kravitz?
Zoe Kravitz. Her
in
interpretation. Yeah.
So remains to be seen whether or not my list gets altered. And then I just finished What If. You guys said you all finished the series as well.
We did.
It did.
What did you think of that finale?
I thought it was good.
It was good.
It
It was not my favorite episode, but it was good.
I thought the previous episode with him getting all the power and fighting
Yeah.
the Watcher and all that was a really, really good episode.
Yes.
The finale, it was good, but I don't like. I understand that he picked the heroes that he did because they all served a purpose in the overall plan. But I still don't think it was responsible to pick Party Thor.
No.
Why not pick the Thor from our reality who was part of the Avengers and all that?
Yeah.
He was dead.
No, not the dead Thor, our Thor, not the what if Thor that got killed in episode 2.
Because he was not. There was no other Thors in the first season.
So I liked, and then the Gamora thing was interesting. Like that came out of nowhere. Her and Hulkbuster Tony Stark.
Yeah, but they didn't kill Tony Stark.
Yeah, he didn't take him. He was like, "Not you, Stark."
Not you, Stark. They did not kill Tony Stark in the episode. Woo-hoo!
I know James Spader did the voice of Ultron in The Age of Ultron. He didn't do it in the show, right?
No, he didn't do it in the show.
Didn't sound
but
like
it didn't sound exact. It
didn't sound like Paul Bettany either.
No,
because
they were generic forms.
Yeah, it was somebody else.
I mean, it wasn't like it was close, but it was definitely not.
I think it would have been a better performance if they had gotten one of the two of them to play those roles. I mean, they got Bettany, I think, for the Vision character in the zombie episode. I think that was Paul Bettany. Mike's IMDb it now.
Oh yeah.
I can see he's on his third screen.
I have 2 screens. This one goes up, so it's actually over top my
Next time we do the next episode we do, Mike's going to be in one of those like reclining chairs where you can like look up at the screens and like
he's going to look like the operator in the Matrix. All the screens are around him. He's going to like blondes, brunettes, redheads.
There's going to be green letters just dripping down in front of him.
I know kung fu.
Whoa.
I used to eat there. Good noodles. So I'm going to move on while Mike is trying to figure this out.
Somebody named Ross Marquand.
Oh, Ross Marquand.
Yeah.
He's on The Walking Dead. And he does a lot of like impressions. Like he's the Red Skull in Infinity War.
Okay.
Because Hugo Weaving didn't want to reprise the role. So Ross Marquand he's a really good voice actor. He does a lot of impressions. So okay.
There you go.
And then there's a new season of The Movies That Made Us coming on Netflix. And from what I can tell from the trailer I saw, they're going to cover some like holiday themed movies, like Halloween horrors and things like that, and some other like 80s comedies. So I'm looking forward to that because so far they've all been like pretty good seasons.
Yeah, no,
I even enjoyed the Pretty Woman episode that they had in season 2.
Yeah.
So what are we drinking tonight, gentlemen? Whoever wants to go first.
I'm enjoying a something pumpkin.
Something pumpkin
From 8 and Sand.
Nice.
It's officially fall and it's officially October, even though the weather doesn't want to fucking cooperate. So I figured, this is actually a good pumpkin beer for it being fall, but the weather being the way it is, because it's a light pumpkin beer. I think it's not one of the heavier ones.
I think I tried it when we went to 8 and Sand together, the 3 of us. I think I tried it, and I think it was like kind of has like a little bit of like a cinnamon taste to it.
A little bit
like a spice.
It's described as an ale brewed with pumpkin, vanilla, lactose, and spices. It's I'm thinking that 6% alcohol by volume.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
It's good. It's not too heavy. I enjoy the pumpkin beers this time of year. Typically, they tend to be of a darker, heavier variety, and this is not. This is light. So,
Mike, what you got going on?
Well, since my birthday's next week, our friend Gil bought me a 4-pack of one of his favorite beers.
A friend of the show, Gil.
Yes. It's of Hops and Clouds.
Hops and Clouds?
Yep. From Vault Brewing. It's a hazy pale ale. citric mosaic, 5.5% alcohol. It is very citrusy.
You said the Vault, is that the one in Yardley?
Yes.
Nice.
So
Kevin would know where it's at.
Yeah. So I struggled tonight with what I wanted to do. I was looking online for cocktails that were inspired by books, and I just didn't have enough like of the ingredients for some of the things to make. And then I was like, I had a really bad week, like a really, really busy week, and I was really tired coming into the show tonight. So I was going to do an espresso martini. So it was an espresso coffee and coffee liqueur mixed together and shaken over ice and all that. And I'm like, you know what? I still want to go to sleep tonight. So I think I'm going to skip that. So I took a little bit of inspiration from Mike last week. He was drinking the Line and Kugel Oktoberfest. And so I went with Sam Adams Oktoberfest.
Nice.
But I decided to add a little something to it.
I saw it making it earlier.
Yeah, very, very early in our show's history, one of the earlier episodes that we had, I was drinking Boilermakers a lot. So I was dropping bourbon in my beer. So I decided, since it is the fall and it is October, I'm going to make my own autumn-inspired Boilermaker. So nice. I have the Sam Adams Oktoberfest with a shot of Lone Lager bourbon from upstate New York. It's one of my favorite bourbons. It's from Montezuma's Hidden Marsh Distillery and Montezuma Winery.
Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Have they made or have you ever tried a maple bourbon? Does that sound like a thing that
Jim Beam makes one?
Jim Beam makes a maple bourbon.
Jim Beam. I've had it. It's pretty good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's it's sweet. It's a little thicker because it does have like a syrupy consistency to it. Okay. I tried pouring it on my waffles, and that was a really bad idea. Because it doesn't become like a honey maple. It doesn't become like a maple bourbon syrup. It just more or less becomes a sponge that is soaked with maple bourbon.
Maybe we need to heat it up in like a pot or something beforehand to caramelize it a little bit. See if that works. But it would burn off the alcohol.
Yeah, I would take the alcohol out of it.
It would burn off the alcohol.
What's the point?
Exactly.
I could have bought the Utopia from the Sam Adams Brewery up in Boston.
Yeah.
Remember that the lady at the tour said that she put it on her pancakes. Speaking of that, I'm drinking out of my Cheers mug from the Cheers bar up in Boston.
Nice.
And it's actually the Oktoberfest with the bourbon's pretty decent.
Cool.
Because it kind of like brings out the caramel flavor in the beer a little bit. So our main segment tonight is all about books that have been turned into film. And I decided to deviate this by 4 categories. And the categories are this: best film adaptations, worst film adaptations, meh, which are film adaptations that are not bad, but could have been better. And then the 4th category I saved for this one book turned to film that deserves a special place in hell. And it's a personal favorite book of mine that turned into a really crappy film adaptation. So I kind of put the list together myself. I picked some movies that I definitely have seen. And for the most part, I've read all these books as well. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to throw some names out and we'll see if we can agree on whether or not they are best adaptations or not. So the first one I have on the best adaptations list, I put on here because for my money, I think it's the best book to film adaptation I've ever seen. And that is To Kill a Mockingbird.
I agree.
I don't think there's any way to argue that.
No, I've read the book multiple times because I've taught it in school a few times. I've read it on my own a couple times, and I've seen the film. I have to see. I probably have seen that film at least 20 times.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the greatest films ever made. And
to my knowledge, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say I can't think of another version on film. I know that they've made it into a play. I know that that's been done and it's gotten rave reviews, but I can't think of another
I think
film adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird.
there was definitely no big like studio production other than the one with Gregory Peck. There may have been a TV version, like a TV film. But I'm not, I'm gonna look it up here. To Kill a Mockingbird. Let's see.
It's taking me to a Mexican restaurant in Ocean City.
Yeah.
That's Tequila Mockingbird. My
Mockingbird.
bad.
so there's let's see, To Kill a Mockingbird. There is To Kill a Mockingbird 1972. That's one we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There is a rap battle of history on YouTube for Kill a Mockingbird versus Animal Farm. There's a spoof of Hunger Games called To Kill a Mockingjay.
Yeah, I think that's a.
There's the Idiot's Guide to Kill a Mockingbird, but there is no other To Kill a Mockingbird movie. That is the only movie version.
There's a how-to movie called How to Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Don't worry.
I don't think it's a film version that needs to be remade. It really doesn't.
Hollywood's running out of ideas. It'll come up soon.
I'm sure it'll do it at some point, but I mean, for the most part, I think it's a perfect film. It's a perfect book.
That'll be next on the list after Gone with the Wind.
Mm. Now, I've never read Gone with the Wind, the book. I've seen the film.
Neither have I.
But I've never read the book. So
Gone with the Wind, it would have to be a PC version of the movie.
Nowadays,
yes.
Mm.
No, that was an uproar back in the 40s or whatever it was when it was made. When he says, I don't give a damn. The next one I have on here is The Outsiders, which
probably the next one.
Probably the next most closely adapted book.
Yeah.
It's now the original theatrical release that came out in '84 cut some things out from the book, so it wasn't a perfect adaptation. But a couple years ago, Amazon released a director's cut that had all these deleted scenes in it, and the deleted scenes covered all the parts of the book that they had cut out.
Okay.
So it was actually like, as I watched it in school with some students that year with the English teacher at my school. Her name is Derry. Derry's a friend of the show. She said, I told her to give her a shout out. And she taught it, and we watched the movie, and it was good because it had him, the English teacher, giving him the assignment to write the story. It had the trial at the end where he has to defend himself, and Cherry Balance gets up on the podium and talks in his defense. It has a scene with him and Cherry in school where she tells him, don't be insulted if you don't see me say hi to you in the hallways, and they kind of just like pass each other, don't really acknowledge each other. It's really, really good. So that's an excellent adaptation because it kind of improves on the original one, which was still pretty good.
Okay.
Plus, it's another book I've read a million times because I think I taught it every year for like the first 10 years of my career.
I think this is a 7th grade curriculum book. Yeah.
I taught it in 7th grade, 8th grade, a couple times with freshman classes that I taught. So yeah, I've done it a few times. Next one I have on the best adaptations list. I'm actually going to skip. I'm going to go down to the one that I have last because it kind of goes in line with The Kill Mockingbird and The Outsiders, and that's Of Mice and Men.
Oh, that was a great movie, and I think that was a Showtime original. That wasn't even big screen. That was something that Showtime produced.
Well, there were two major theatrical releases. I know there's been like a few like TV movies and things like that in between, and stage versions and all. But there were two major movie adaptations. The first one was in the 1930s, and it starred Lon Chaney as George, or as Lenny rather. And Lon Chaney at that point was best known for like his monster movie roles, like the Wolfman.
Yeah.
And it also starred Burgess Meredith as George. Burgess Meredith would go on to play Mickey in the Rocky series.
Right.
And the Penguin on the Adam West Batman series. And it's a really, really good adaptation. And it's the one that gets spoofed by the Looney Tunes all the time. Whenever you hear the Looney Tunes cartoon go, what are we going to do, George? What are we going to do? It's a spoof of the Lenny character from that version.
Okay.
But the other major theatrical release was John Malkovich and Gary Sinise.
Yep.
And Gary Sinise, aside from starring in that film, wrote the adaptation and directed it. And I thought that was a really, really good adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big book. It's a fairly short novel, so you can kind of cover everything you need to in a 2-hour film. So yeah, I would definitely put Of Mice and Men up there. Then
agree.
we got into some a few more like obscure ones here. So The Godfather. Now, the novel. How was that? Was it supposed
That
to be
was
a gun
me.
shot?
I'm sorry.
Guns. Yeah, it's guns.
Yeah, that's Mike's soundboard making a gunshot sound, but it did sound like Kevin
Oh,
was farted. Yes.
Yeah.
The Godfather novel by Mario Puzo actually covers both of the first two films. So the backstory of Vito Corleone, the rise of Michael Corleone, and then where Michael Corleone turns into this cold stone, killer in the second film. That's all covered in the one novel.
Okay.
But what is not covered in the film is a really weird series of chapters from the novel that could never have made it on the film and would totally have destroyed the movie. There's a whole series of chapters that follows the story of the woman that Sonny is having the affair with. So you remember at the beginning during Connie's wedding,
Yeah.
he's
In the bathroom.
in the bed, he's cheating on his wife with
Mhm.
one of the bridesmaids, right? So there's a whole story, a whole like 3 or 4 chapters in the book that explain why they were together. And it's because Sonny has a pretty big member. I know that's like one of the jokes that they make in the movie too, is that he's pretty well endowed. And it's hard for him to have sex with his wife because of it. But he's able to have sex with the bridesmaid because she has an overly large vagina. And there's a whole series of chapters where she goes to visit a plastic surgeon in LA who's going to help her with her condition because she happens to be friends with Johnny Fontaine, who's the singer guy that's the Godfather's, nephew in the movie and all that. It's like so bizarre. And I remember reading the novel going, this is a really good novel. And then I got to these 3 chapters right in the middle of them. I'm like, where the hell did this come from?
And then it was the base for the third movie.
No, yeah, that was there was nothing in the novel that the third movie had in it at all.
It's a flashback sequence from the third movie that they cut out.
Can you imagine, man, if that was in the film? Man, it's so bizarre. So it's a great adaptation for what it has in the movie.
I'll be honest, I started reading it. I think I was reading it down the shore, and Michael got as far as, killing the cop and the Turk. And then he went to Italy, and that's when I don't know why I put it down, but I put it down and I never picked it up after that. So I didn't get through it.
If you've seen the movies, you've pretty much read the book. It's a straight up adaptation, aside from
3 chapters.
The puffy vagina story. It pretty much covers the entire book. 2 books, or the book covers both movies cover the entire book. There are some scenes that are missing from the movies, like the guy that kills his wife in Sicily, Fabrizio, the one that betrays him and puts the bomb in the car. There is a chapter where they hunt him down in America, and he gets his vengeance on him. Now in the movie, there's a deleted scene where they hunt him down and they shoot him. And in the book, you find out he's hiding out working at a pizza parlor, and Michael has a couple of his goons show up and throw him in one of the pizza ovens.
Oh, that coming.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
but yeah, it's a good book. It's an interesting book. If you skip chapters like 13 through 15, it's nobody needs the puffy chapters. Silence of the Lambs.
That one I did read all the way through. I thought it was well done. Anthony Hopkins did a very good job, but I can't get the English out of my head when I see him perform. And Hannibal Lecter is a Southern individual, so it was just kind of like tough for that.
I mean, but he did make it his own character.
He did, and it's one of the most feared, villains. There you go. My wife's next to me doing the yeah. But yeah, I mean, he did make it his own. It's just the character is slightly different, and I think it's because of how much I already know of Anthony Hopkins.
It's iconic in the sense that you think he won the Academy Award for Best Actor that year, and he was only in 18 minutes of the film, and the film is almost 3 hours long.
Right.
And it's like he's so gigantic when he's on the screen in that movie that you forget that he's not in it the whole way through.
And then he went on to do Howard Stern.
Yeah. and most recently Transformer: The Last Night.
Yes.
Oh no. Next one is The Lord of the Rings.
Extended version?
Director's cut, extended version.
Even like if you're just talking about the original theatrical release, I mean they're pretty dense. Like they cover a lot of stuff. But I think the major omission is the story of Tom Bombadil, which the real hardcore fans have a problem with. I don't think, it didn't really serve to have it in the films, I think.
No.
But otherwise, I mean, yeah, and if you watch the extended versions, then you're getting a lot of that stuff that was in the books that just would taking too much time to cover. I feel like Lord of the Rings is something we're going to talk about again in the future, and we've already talked about in the past.
Yes.
So I don't think we have to go too much into that. And then we could even say the same thing about Harry Potter, as I said before. Like for the most part, the adaptations are pretty good. I know Mike has a problem with the Order of the Phoenix being the largest book and the shortest movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of characters that are cut out, but I think overall it does capture the spirit a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to know more about it, go check out one of our previous episodes. I believe it was episode 30, 29, something like that. I know it was
We
like,
really should number these things.
Yeah, they are numbered. I just don't know them off the top of my head.
You keep a list somewhere.
We're up to 35, man. Like I told you I was gonna do that best of episode one day, and I'm like, I'm never gonna do it if we keep making episodes and I don't. Next one on the list is Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I had no idea this was I had no idea this was a book.
So it probably shouldn't go on the best adaptation list because it is completely different from the novel. But the reason I put it on the best adaptation list is because the author of the novel thought that the movie was superior to the novel he wrote. The novel is darker. It's less of a comedy. And it gets a little like existential at points. Like the characters, the cartoon characters can die, but they like will reincarnate, and there's like multiple versions of the same character, and it's like it's really like kind of weird like that, and it's very, very dark. It's more of a 1930s or 40s noir story.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much, please, Eddie,
Boy.
And definitely not as much Jessica Rabbit.
She's just drawn that way.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. That's a great line.
But now I heard that they're revising the way she's drawn.
Really?
Yes.
What are they gonna do?
They're toning it down, just like
they're gonna give her
Space Jam.
They're gonna give her. Yeah, they did with Lola Bunny. And I remember like the first Space Jam movie. Like it was like if you were a fan of furries, you love the original Space Jam movie. Lola Bunny. Look, there was
bestiality on this show.
There was very little subtlety in the drawing of Lola Bunny. And then you see the latest one with LeBron James, and she's like, fully clothed. And
look, it's another one of those things that can't be done today. You have Jessica Rabbit, you have Lola Bunny, and you have whatever Cool World was. Remember?
Oh yeah, that was
that was like what?
That's Kim Basinger. That was supposed to be even raunchier.
Really?
And it actually was. Kim Basinger had asked them to tone it down because she was afraid of what if any kids would see the movie thinking it was like a movie for kids. She was worried about it, so she had like the studio tone it down a little bit. It was actually supposed to be raunchier.
Oh my God.
Next one I have on here is No Country for Old Men. Cormac McCarthy is the author of the book. It's another one like, I don't know if either of you have seen the film or read the book. The film is okay. The film is a little long at times. It's worth it to see Javier Bardem as the villain, because he is one of the scariest villains I've ever seen in a movie. But I have read the novel, and it is fairly close to the novel. So I have it on there for best adaptations just for that reason. It's not that it's necessarily like a great book or a great. I mean, it won the best picture, but I feel like it's a little bit long. It's in some spaces. Then I have on here The Time Machine.
The
original film, not the new one or the newer one.
The newer one, yeah.
The newer one is one of those films that kind of suffered from an overuse of
special
CGI.
effects.
Yeah, an overuse of CGI. The original film had some really cool special effects for a movie that was made in the 50s.
Yes, it was pretty good.
Yeah, on a book that was written in the 1880s, you know. And in that same vein, because it's the same author, H.G. Wells, I have War of the Worlds from 1953 as a great adaptation.
Oh, so not Tom
not the Keanu Reeves, the Tom Cruise one,
not Tom Cruise.
Which we've already talked about a couple during the Spielberg episode.
Yes,
2 episodes ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Spielberg episode that I hate that freaking War of the Worlds film.
I know.
So yeah, we go right to the worst adaptations. I have the remake of The Time Machine as a terrible adaptation. I have War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, the Spielberg Tom Cruise film, as a terrible adaptation. I don't know if either of you want to fight me on that, but
no, but I need to the beer and take a quick 5.
You got it. So I'm going to pause the recording.
Yep.
Welcome back to Films and Fermentation. We're talking about book to film adaptations, our favorites, our least favorites, and things that were probably ideas that should never have been done in the first place. So next on my list of bad adaptations, I have The Hobbit. Who's going to argue with me on that? I feel like I'm being unfair.
You're not being unfair, as it's a bad adaptation. I mean, the movies weren't terrible, but why would you add characters that weren't in the book?
And how do you take a book that was roughly 300 pages and turn it into what? 3 movies? Like Lord of the Rings. Obviously, Lord of the Rings, you could have made 6 movies out of it.
So parts of the Hobbit, the movie, they was spot on, like the what's it called, the unexpected party with the dwarves showing up. That was spot on with the book for the movie. But when you add Legolas,
yeah,
having him there,
I think a lot of that had to do with putting in a familiar face for people who are not familiar with the book.
Read the book. So
yeah. I was an English teacher for 20 years. I think I'm going to argue that point.
I will go with it is a hard book to read.
Not as hard as Lord of the Rings. I think Lord of the Rings is a lot more dense. So
yeah,
and I've read them both. Next I have on here is Aragon. Anybody familiar with this one?
That's the one about the dragon.
Yeah.
Isn't that the one from Lord of the Rings?
No.
Oh, sorry.
That's Aragorn. Aragon was a novel written by a kid named Christopher Paolini. He wrote it when he was a teenager and self-published the book. And it did well enough that a major publishing company picked it up and reissued it, and it became a bestseller. And I read the book, and the book was okay. The book was written like he was a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. And
so the book was written like Dungeons and Dragons. Like there was a lot of like talk about like skill level and charisma and things like that.
Okay.
But trying to make it seem like it was a natural part of things. And then the movie adaptation was downright god awful. It changed. It didn't just change characters. It changed entire races.
Oh wow!
Like there was a country in a novel that he visits, and he has to convince the people of that country to fight on his side against the villain, but they're not regular people. They're like some mystical creature that lives in this country. And then in the movie, they just made them regular people. Like they're just normal humans. And it's like you totally eliminated an entire race from the mythology of this book. And it was oh my God. It was so disappointing. So disappointing. I couldn't even read. He had 2 follow-up novels, and I was so disappointed by the film. I didn't even want to read the follow-up novels. The Dark Tower.
Stephen King.
Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
We could do a whole show on just Stephen King movies. Books.
Yeah. And how god awful most of those adaptations are. Aside from I missed one on the best adaptation list. I could have put Shawshank Redemption on there.
Yeah,
because it is an amazing adaptation of a pretty good book. But for purposes of this, I put The Dark Tower down. The movie that just came out recently with McConaughey and Idris Elba. They tried to cram every one of the Dark Tower books into one movie.
So they did the opposite of the Hobbit.
Yeah, it was. I think he wrote like 8 novels or something in the Dark Tower series.
Yeah,
and it's over like 40,000 pages of total story, and they try to cram it all into one movie, which obviously didn't work. They tried to sell it. The trailer tried to sell it on like the action that was in it, but didn't really say much about the story. And for obvious reasons, they were trying to hide the fact that they fucked it up. It bombed anyway.
Yeah.
The Cat in the Hat.
That was exactly like the book. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's argue.
I was struggling on this one. I'm like, should I put The Cat in the Hat down there? It's not a novel, but I thought it'd be funny just to include a Dr. Seuss thing, because I could have put How the Grinch Stole Christmas on there.
Could have done the whole series that Netflix had. Ham.
I thought about putting
Here's a Who?
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs on there too, because that movie took it a whole nother level than what the book was. And so I actually have 2 children's books on here just because I thought the film adaptations were horrible. So The Cat in the Hat, which it was Mike Myers trying to be Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
but like trying to bite off the popularity of the Grinch. The other one I have on there is Where the Wild Things Are.
Your wife's favorite book.
It's my favorite children's book. I loved Where the Wild Things Are, and every time somebody, like one of our friends, has a baby, one of the first things we do is buy a Where the Wild Things Are book for them. And the movie just you make 2-hour film out of a book that was like 10 pages.
Yeah.
And you put James Gandolfini's voice in there as the lead monster, and all of a sudden it's Tony Soprano as a monster. And it was dark, man. It was a brutally dark film. And I'm like, and Katie and I went to see it in the theater because we were kind of excited about it, and it was like we both left going, what the hell did we just watch?
I don't remember that in the book.
Yeah. Next one I have on here is the Will Smith classic I, Robot.
Isaac Asimov would be turning in his grave.
He probably already is turning in his grave. I, Robot, the novel, was actually 3 stories in one. And each of the 3 stories emphasized one of the 3 robot laws. So it was like, don't harm humans, whatever they were. And it was a really good book. And I, Robot had really nothing to do with it other than the title.
So wasn't one of the other stories, or wasn't one of the stories based off of Bicentennial Man, or am I thinking something different?
No, I think you're right. I think Bicentennial Man was one of the stories, or an adaptation of one of the stories.
Right.
Yeah, so not a great adaptation. And then we already talked about War of the Worlds. So then the next list I have here is the meh. As in, they were good, but not perfect. The Great Gatsby, and I'm talking about the Baz Luhrmann directed, Leonardo DiCaprio starring Great Gatsby film.
I liked it. I was okay with it.
Now, I like the novel. It's another book that I've taught numerous times, so I've read it a lot. The original film adaptation was Robert Redford, was made in the 70s. And it was a much more grounded, like realistic version of the story. It was very true to the book. It was a little dry, it was a little slow at times. And then you get the Baz Luhrmann one. All of a sudden, it's not The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's Baz Luhrmann's fever dream.
Hey, Lee.
That spawned a million memes of Leonardo DiCaprio turning around with a drink in his hand and smiling.
You forgot one on the bad list.
What's that?
Battlefield Earth.
No, I didn't.
That's a bad list.
That wasn't even a good book. Why would I include it? I remember picking the book up before knowing what it was. I picked it up because I knew it was by L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
But it was before I really knew what Scientology was. And I started reading it, and I got through the first page and put the book down. It's the first time I ever picked up a book and didn't give it at least half a try. It was just from the first opening sentence was just inane garbage. And then I started finding out more about L. Ron Hubbard and Dianetics and what Scientology was, and you can see the parallels in this story. And then you have that sci-fi bullshit fest that John Travolta put together. He roped poor Forrest Whitaker into it. It was terrible all around. I'm not even going to talk about it. But get back to The Great Gatsby. Get back to no, it's okay. That's just funny that you brought that up. Get back to The Great Gatsby. I know my students love that version with DiCaprio, but it's because they were distracted by all the bright colors and shiny imagery. I am not a Baz Luhrmann fan. Like I'm not a fan of Moulin Rouge. I'm not a fan of the Romeo and Juliet film that he did. He's just a little too much.
You did like Strictly Ballroom though, so
he's just a little much for me, Baz Luhrmann. Next on the meh list is The Hunger Games. All three. It's weird.
I thought the movies were underwhelming. I was expecting more from some of the descriptions of the some of the games, some of the traps in the games. I was kind of hoping for more.
I think that's probably the best adjective for it, underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love the first novel.
Mm-hmm.
I hated the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
I hated the second novel. Loved the second movie. I thought the second movie was one of the better adaptations of the three books. The third book did not need to be split into two movies.
I remember when Adrian was reading the books, and you two were just talking about the whole thing back.
Yeah, because Adrian and I both got into it because Adrian's all about like the Team PETA, Team Gale stuff, and like the problem with the first movie I feel is I think it was rushed. I think it was like made to capitalize on the popularity of the book, but didn't really spend too much time trying to be like the book.
Right.
So the book is told from her perspective, which gives you a whole new like idea of what's going on because you're learning things as she learns them. You're seeing things through her eyes. There's a lot more about the hunger. I mean, that's why it's called the Hunger Games. Because they're starving.
So they missed that whole part in the movies.
Yeah, they kind of glance over that. There's some of the characters are watered down. Like Hamish, the character that Woody Harrelson plays, is a straight up awful human being and an alcoholic in the novels, and in the movie he's kind of like a comical alcoholic. PETA loses his leg in the first novel.
Yeah,
they don't do that in the movie. Mm-mm. The thing that I think most upset about in the film was when they're attacked by the mutant dogs at the end.
Mm-hmm.
In the novel, they're genetically engineered to have the eyes of all of the fallen tributes.
They're supposed to look like those
look like the fallen tributes.
right.
So like when you're looking at the face
it's
of this
supposed to be
mutant,
haunting and terrifying. Yeah.
Like she sees Roos facing one of them, and she sees the other girl's facing one of them, and it's like, aside from being just terrifying beasts that could tear you apart, they look like the people that you either killed or died in your arms or whatever.
Yeah.
So that kind of ruined it for me a little bit. That and the beard that Wes Bentley had. I did like Elizabeth Banks as Effie Trinket though. Ender's Game. I love this book. It's probably one of my favorite novels. I read it when I was a kid. I taught it a couple times. The movie is not bad. It stars Asa Butterfield, who does a pretty good job as Ender. Harrison Ford plays the curmudgeonly colonel of the battle school that he goes to. Viola Davis is in it, and she's great in everything she's in. I just had a problem with some of the changes they made. Like, he's 6 years old in the novel, and he's in the battle school for 7 years. So he's like 13 when they send him out and have him, command his first legion of starships and stuff. In the movie, he's like already 13, and it kind of makes it seem like he goes through the battle school in like a month. Like it's like really elevated. And they cut out like a lot of the subplot between him and his brother and sister, which was a very majorly important part of the novel. Next one I have on the list is Dune.
Not the new one coming out yet.
Now, I haven't seen the new one yet. I am so stoked to see the new one. I can't wait to see it. I like Denis Villeneuve, the guy that directed it. He did Arrival, and he did Blade Runner 2049. I like some of the actors. It's some great actors in it, man. You got Josh Brolin. You got Oscar Isaac. Dave Bautista.
Zendaya.
I like her. She's growing on me as an actress.
Yeah.
And Timothy Chalamet is the star, and it looks really, really good. The book is my all-time favorite novel. I love Dune. I'm rereading it now in anticipation for the release of the film. And I've already recently rewatched both other versions that exist. So it's the 1983 David Lynch version and the 2000 Sci-Fi Channel movie adaptation. The David Lynch version, not great. It was originally 4 hours long. The studio made him cut it down to 2 hours. So you lose a lot of explanation and a lot of things that would make it make more sense. The Sci-Fi Channel movie adaptation was a 3-night miniseries. So it was 6 hours long. So that covered a lot more than the Lynch film did. It had really good special effects for an early movie like that. But neither one really captured the book. And what I mean by that is the main character is not a hero. He's like a man who becomes a messiah to these people. And they use their devotion for him to go on a killing spree in all the following novels. They go from like world to world and kill in his name.
How did you go wrong in the movie when you have Patrick Stewart and Sting in it?
I didn't say I hated the movie. I love the David Lynch film. I like it because I had read the novel before I saw the film. So like I
probably made more sense to you.
Yeah, I understood it. I was older when I saw the David Lynch film. I was only 6 years old in 1983. Then I have I Am Legend with Will Smith. Another Will Smith sci-fi book adaptation.
This one was based off of what was his name? Christopher.
It was Chris. I want to say Matheson. I think was the name.
Chris Matheson, who did. Yeah, he's done other things.
Now this is actually there was another adaptation of I Am Legend starring
Charlton Heston, the Omega Man.
Yeah, the Omega Man. A lot different from the book as well. The I Am Legend that Will Smith did is not a bad film. What my problem I have with it is the CGI is terrible.
Yeah.
The vampire species looks like rubber.
Cartoonish.
Yeah. And they totally changed the ending, which is to say that he's like this is the new evolution of human, and he's the boogeyman to them. So because he's constantly like killing them to study them, they are afraid of him. He's a legend in that sense. So the I Am Legend refers to him as sort of like this mythological monster to this new evolution of people. And in the film, they make them look like kind of like the villains, you know.
Yeah.
And then now I put this on the meh list because I have a feeling you guys would meh this one, Starship Troopers. But I fucking love this movie. I love Starship.
If you can take it for what it is, which is, you know, campy to an extent.
Here's the thing. Like, I love Paul Verhoeven movies. So, like, I love Total Recall. I love RoboCop. I even kind of like Showgirls a little bit. For the train wreck that it is.
That's going too far.
Yeah, seriously. So we just lost credibility.
I'm kidding. So Paul Verhoeven directed Starship Troopers, so it has a lot of his signatures, which is the satirical element. Making it's like a fascist society, but they make it look like it's like, you know. And the novel was based on by Robert Heinlein, one of the greatest sci-fi novelists of all time. Much different book than the film. I mean, the book is not satirical at all. It's very outright in saying like this is a fascist society. And the people in the book are actually Brazilian or Argentinian or whatever it's supposed to be, as opposed to, you know, lily white, blonde boy,
red hair, pale skin, green eyes.
Yeah. What's his name? Doogie Howser coming from fucking Rio de Janeiro. So yeah, and then the last category I have here is should burn in hell, and I only have one book on that list. The book is called World War Z.
Great book.
Love this fucking book. One of my probably my second favorite book all time. It's written by Max Brooks, who is the son of Mel Brooks.
Yes, it is.
And he is a zombie aficionado because he's written a number of zombie books. World War Z is told from the point of view of a journalist who is going around the world and interviewing people who have survived the zombie apocalypse. So the story actually takes place after everything has already happened. And it's a series of basically flashbacks told by the point of view of all different people from different walks of life. So you have like a general who fought in one of the battles. You have the scientist who was at ground zero. You have the doctor who worked on the ground zero patient. You have a child who survived while watching his parents get killed. You have like, it's a collection of stories and it's amazing. It's very well written, very detailed, and he does a good job of making each character kind of have their own voice, be like a different person.
Yeah.
Almost like you're actually reading a series of interviews.
Yep.
And then the movie stars Brad Pitt, and it's another movie about how beautiful people can't die. And the only thing that the movie and the book have in common is the title. There is absolutely nothing about the movie that has anything to do with it. So much so that Max Brooks has sworn he's never selling another book to Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Because he was so disappointed by what they did to his book. And that's why I say in conclusion, fuck that movie. Hard.
With no lube.
Yeah, rawhide that bitch. So let's just look at this real quick. This is Mike's James Bond list. Casino Royale, which was done with Daniel Craig. I actually liked that. Was a pretty good movie. We have Live and Let Die. That was that Roger Moore?
That was Roger Moore, and I think that was the one with
Christopher Walken.
No, Walken was A View to a Kill.
Okay.
Why can't I think of
I know Live and Let Die had the Paul McCartney song at the beginning. Moonraker, one of the cheesiest of the James Bond films. That's another Roger Moore one. He's on the moon. That's actually
he's on a space station.
Yeah, but that's actually what they're spoofing in the Austin Powers film. That he's on the moon. Diamonds Are Forever, 1971. That was that Connery?
That was Connery.
That was Connery.
Yep.
From Russia with Love, that was Connery. Dr. No, which was the first film ever made, that was Connery as well. Goldfinger, which I think is by far the best James Bond film. It's definitely my favorite of the Connery films.
Okay.
I love Goldfinger. You expect me to talk. Yeah, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Quantum of Solace, I have not seen. That's a Daniel Craig one. View to a Kill.
Probably the worst Roger Moore movie.
For Your Eyes Only, which was Roger Moore as well.
Yep.
Thunderball. That's Connery.
Connery.
The Living Daylights, that was Timothy Dalton.
Yeah.
I think Timothy Dalton gets like short shrift with it because I didn't think he was that bad.
No, I think the problem with Timothy Dalton is everybody wanted at the time
Pierce Brosnan
to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Spy Who Loved Me, that was that the first Roger Moore one? It was like an early Roger Moore.
I think it is.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which was the
worst,
the one-off George Lazenby James Bond.
Worst of all.
You Only Live Twice, which is Connery.
Yep.
The Man with the Golden Gun. And the best titled one of them all, Octopussy.
Man with the Golden Gun wasn't bad. Wasn't his best one, but wasn't
but
bad.
these
had Christopher Lee in it.
Yeah. These were all the ones that were written by Ian Fleming.
Yes.
Because so it was Skyfall, the two or three Pierce Brosnan ones, like those weren't Ian Fleming stories. Those were original adaptations.
And of course the new one.
Yep. Which is the last of the Daniel Craig films.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to pause this for a second. All right, bye. Thank you for joining us for episode 35 of Films and Fermentation, season 2, episode 2. We talked about some books that were turned into films, and maybe you might agree with us, or if you have any suggestions, if there's anything that we missed, feel free to email us at filmsandfermentation@gmail.com. We're always looking forward to hearing some comments from you, or suggest some drink ideas that we can cover in the next episode, or any future episode. Check us out on Instagram at Films and Fermentation, Facebook.com/Films and Fermentation, or check out our website, filmsandfermentation.weebly.com. There's some new content on there currently. I am working on adding some other social media sites to our list of ways to contact us. And we also have our show is now featured on a number of different podcast platforms outside of Spotify and Anchor and Stitcher and all that. There's a bunch of smaller podcast platforms that I've added us to as well. So you can find us out there somewhere. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where you can see our pretty, pretty faces every week. Join us next week for episode 36. That'll be season 2, episode 3, where we are going to be talking about actors with unmistakable voices.
Like this one.
The Minions, those are actors with unmistakable voices.
Banana.
I'm talking like people like, Sean Connery, or Morgan Freeman.
I am Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi. So that'll be next week's episode, actors with unmistakable voices. So once again, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you enjoyed listening to us as much as we enjoyed recording this episode for you. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
Cheers, everybody.